met someone who deserves the day the way that you do. Joseph, it's time to get ready and the spotlight's shining down upon you. Joseph, so be fair, oh, I'm on my way, yeah, here it comes. And I'm delivering a wish to you, so get ready, from every peak and valley they're telling you to get ready, 'cause here it comes. It's on the way. It's a celebration across the nation.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. I'm kind of, but I'm Ross, you know. Jaffe is nothing more than a zombie extra, you know. Joseph Jaffe is not famous.
I just want you to know I practiced this word about 20 times to make sure that I did not mispronounce it.
I have a question. Has anyone ever said with all due respect and then not followed up with a zinger?
His side of the bed. If I come in and I'm on the other side, he will move it. Yeah, that's it.
Which side do you like? With all due respect, you make a good point.
Cheery Oreos! Toasted Oreos!
Mute. He's muted.
I love what he's saying. He doesn't need sounds.
You're so small, squishing your head, Joseph.
You can.
Do it with me, Joe.
With all due respect, you really do look handsome, Bruce. Cheery Oreos! Toasted Oreos!
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How did I do
insane!
that? You just made the intro reel. Yes, you did. Shalom, shalom. Ma shlomcha? Beseder? Metsuyan, Metsuyan. That's about the full extent of my working Hebrew right now. The rest of it is just really swear words and insults. And I will not be using any of them when I bring on my very famous guest, Lilach. This is an old photo of her. We'll talk about that later as well. Lilach Bullock. Lilach Bullock. I'm excited to have her on the show. She is a thought leader. She is an influencer. She is a practitioner. She is a coach. And she's helping people understand every element and more about effective marketing, content strategy, B2B, and such. And she lives in Israel, which I discovered. And I discovered her name is not Lilac, although I'm sure that's her favorite flower. It is Lilach. And in Afrikaans, lach means to laugh. So hopefully we will laugh. We will live, we will love, and we will laugh. And the word love is important, as you will see later. I am connecting the dots as erratically, as non-linearly, and as manically as I possibly can. But I hope you are well. And I know that Glenn is well. He says, here it comes. Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Thank you. You know, you don't have to emphasize the not so radically, Glenn. But yeah, I appreciate that. Look, there's a lot to discuss, a lot of stuff going on in the world, in the news. The world seems to be spinning out of control. And yet sometimes the best thing we can do is to anchor ourselves in what we know is true, in what we know to be true, in what has worked before and what will work today and what will work in the future. And then at the same time to mix it up a little bit. And so earlier I had a chat with my brother from another mother, Mitch Joel, and spoke about my simple 2x2 matrix, which is, let go of, crush, eradicate, obliterate the worst of the old, maintain, keep the best of the old, embrace the best of the new, and ignore the worst of the new. And I feel like it is such a good approach. Maybe I'll ask Lilach about that as well. What is the worst of the old? What is the best of the old? What is the best of the new? What is the worst of the new? And how does it all come together? But before I do that, it is time for our seated soliloquy. And today's seated soliloquy is called Pride and Prejudice. It is a slightly different spin on maybe what you might imagine. You see, it actually begins like it's always a good opportunity for me to show Harry Kane because, you know, I'm a Spurs fan. Come on, you Spurs. Harry Kane, the captain of England. And the reason why I'm showing him is, you know, the captains of England, Wales, Belgium, Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands in this World Cup going on in Qatar will not wear the One Love anti-discrimination armband in their World Cup opening games after confirmation that their captains would be given yellow cards, not rainbow cards, but yellow cards if they took part in the initiative. The announcement came just before the World Cup campaigns were scheduled to start. Now, the National Federation said that they were prepared to pay a fine for their captains to wear the armband, but once it became clear their captains would be sanctioned, they had to change plans. I heard one piece of commentary basically saying that this would show a sign, this would be a sign of weakness to capitulate, and I believe that capitulate they did. Maybe some will choose not to, but the reason why I called this soliloquy Pride and Prejudice is because in this case, whether it is the Rainbow Nation or it is gay pride or it is just equality, whether it's gender equality, whether it's just accepting people for who they are, their differences, and embracing them, whether it's taking a knee, whatever you do to be able to demonstrate some empathy. And at the end of the day, you know, even getting back to B2B, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So how do you deal with prejudice in this world? How do you take a stand? How do you take a knee? How do you take a position when you're a brand? How do you take a position when, for the most part, business has thrived on being vanilla? And as you've heard me say many times on the show, which actually came from an episode on the show, the thing about vanilla, it's the most popular flavor, but no one will drive across town for it. So just some thoughts, you know, trying not to take a position per se, although my position is fairly known. But sometimes we have to be proud. We have to be proud of who we are, where we've come from, where we're heading, and take a stand in order to demonstrate our commitment, our ability to, you know, as the old saying goes, if we don't stand for something, well, we'll fall for anything. And now it's time to bring on my very famous and my very special guest, Lilach Bullock. I'm loving the name, and we had such a good conversation in the green room in advance, where she basically said, in the true classic sense of AMA, she said, "Ask me anything, whatever you want to talk about." So we're going to do that. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about her. Highly regarded on the world speaker circuit, Lilach Bullock has graced Forbes and number 10 Downing Street. Number 10 Downing Street. Maybe she should be the Prime Minister of England with her presence. She's a hugely connected and highly influential serial entrepreneur, listed in Forbes as one of the top 20 women social media power influencers, and likewise as one of the top social media power influencers. She is one of the most dynamic personalities in the social media market and was crowned, so maybe she could be the queen, the social influencer of Europe by Oracle, a recipient for a Global Women Champions Award by the Global Connections for Women Foundation for her outstanding contribution and leadership in business. We are truly, truly lucky to have her here, Lilach. Bruchim Abayim.
Thank you so much. I love the intro. That is a really old picture. I think that's like 10 years old.
So, you know, here's the thing. We're talking about flexibility, and we're talking about, you know, dexterity and agility. And so this is the photo that I found. This is the one that Google told me. You know, I'm going to blame Google. I'm going to say Google
I
said
think we need to
this.
blame Google. How I've aged. I'm nearly 50, and it's like, oh my God, I look at this picture. It's like, oh.
Well, this was the one. This was the one you sent me.
Yes, that's the hair and makeup one. That's this year, that one. But I obviously am wearing hair and makeup done, and now it's just, this is what I look like when I wake up. There we go.
Bez is here, and Bez said, "Happy Monday," or it could be any day in the world, because you know this is an episode that will appear in the not too distant future. Yes, saw that announcement for the World Cup and various captains not wearing the armband because of the yellow card sanction. Yeah, I mean it's a shame, and it's a shame also because I guess this was the position. You know what Denmark are doing, which I found very interesting, is their silent protest was their logo and all the identifiers on their actual shirts are now the same color as the shirt. So black logo on black, red logo on red. And so in a way, their shirts are just very plain shirt. They're kind of, you know, they're there under silent protest as opposed to just not showing up.
I don't know. I saw the Iranian, they didn't sing their national anthem, did they?
Didn't they? Well, no. I was so fascinated on, you know, God Save the King.
Well, apparently one of the England players said God Save the Queen by mistake. I heard that.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
Probably Harry Maguire. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not a football fan at all. I don't watch it much, to the detest of my husband, who's a massive football fan. But I'm just not into it at all. So, yeah. But I follow the news and the trends and things like that. I think the whole, I'm very opinionated, but I think the whole protest, these silly protests, it's like either protest properly and don't play, or, you know, these are kind of half-marked. They don't do anything. They're not very symbolic. I just think they're a bit of a publicity thing, saying the things they're supposed to say, not to upset or offend people. But the only way to protest is by not playing. That's
right. You know what? I think you actually make a really good point. And so, you know, if we move to, for example, you know, the world of Twitter, there is your very influential Twitter account, and I'll come back to that in a second.
I didn't pay for the blue tick, by the way. I don't know why people are going to pay for that.
Oh, I listen. It was one of the greatest days of my life when I became verified for only $8.
I was so excited. I remember it as well, but I wouldn't pay for it. And
when you became really verified, you are for real verified. I tell you, you know, for me, my whole life, I mean, writing 5 books, being a keynote speaker, being everything, like I could not get verified. So this is the one time I have to say where I gladly paid the $8, and I say, to hell with all of you.
Oh, you know what? Get a refund. It's really not worth it.
Get a refund.
It doesn't do anything. I mean, I think years ago when I first got verified, it was worth something. And I remember I was so excited. I was so happy. And it really meant something. You know, brands stood out for it. People followed you more. It really did make a difference. Whereas today, I don't think it's worth it. I suppose everything gets devalued, doesn't it? It's like Forbes. Years ago, being featured in Forbes was worth so much. And each year, the value goes down and down and down because it's now much easier to get featured in Forbes.
I like where the conversation is going, because I feel the same way with respect to when I wrote my first book back in 2004. I got a book deal. I pitched it. It went for reviews. It went for rounds and rounds of reviews with the committee. And then it seemed like we moved into a position where all you needed to do was have a Twitter account and 20,000 followers, which of course could be bought or fake followers, and you would get a book deal. So Lilach, I wonder, you know, if you think now and you even just transplant this conversation to brands that are looking to create some kind of authority, some influence, some credibility, how do we determine what is real and what is not? What is real and what is fake? What is a blue verify?
I love that question. Can I be brutally honest? I'm going to get slated for this.
You can only be honest.
Anything I read or see online, ever. Because people like myself who are in PR and online, everything is gained. Everything. There's no such thing as real. I'm very anti. Because like you can game everything. Like I've worked with companies and helped them raise hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars and do crowdfunding and everything. And that's gamed. Everything is gamed. It's like, you can buy anything today. And I think, like, even, do you remember when, what was it, Gangnam Style? Do you remember the song years ago?
Sorry.
Everyone was saying it went viral and all of this. I did a case study on it years ago, and it didn't go viral. It was 18 months in the planning. It was a massive strategy and plan behind it all. So I think things are sometimes things do go viral, obviously. But a lot is very planned, very staged. And I think, obviously, look, some brands who are very creative and very clever and are prepared to be more bold and take risks and try things and experiment, then obviously they're going to have more success than others who play it safe. But at the end of the day, you can pretty much buy anything, which is why, influencers exist, because they're basically being paid to talk about brands and things like that. And I talk openly about this because I'm one of them, and I'm not afraid to be. I'm very honest and transparent in what I say. So yeah.
I mean, listen, you can even buy a World Cup, apparently. Just
I'm pretty sure you probably can. Yeah.
Just ask the Qataris.
There you go. You see.
Well,
I mean, yeah. Let's not get too political as well. But I mean, you can buy anything, if we want to go down that road as well.
Well, listen, we're talking about gaming. We're talking about buying. If that is true, and it is true, and you know what, and let's take a slightly different position on it now, which is, listen, if you've got the money and the means to buy something legitimately, credibly, legally, etc., and let's just assume that that's okay. But how does one, being a consumer, being a buyer, right, being someone trying to hire a consultancy or a enterprise software company, how do you now determine what is real and what is not? What is gamed and what is not?
So, I mean, whenever I look at, I'm obsessed with looking at ads in my newsfeed on Facebook, and there's a particular ad, and it's had huge amounts of likes and comments and of people raving about the product. And I'm very skeptical, because I run those campaigns, and I know that people just, these companies buy people to pretend to be buying the product, and to bump up the comments and things like that. So I think, everything is bought to some extent. And sometimes it is, how big is your budget? And I think consumers have to be really, really savvy about what they purchase, and to I mean, not all companies buy into this and there's fake, but there's often a lot of fakeness. I mean, you can buy anything, like on LinkedIn, you can join pods where you get people to like and comment to boost things up. And I think the problem, and just to be fair as well, because I don't think it's businesses' fault that they're doing this, is the algorithms which are preventing people from seeing everyone's content. So they're being forced to game things and play the games, because otherwise they're just talking to nobody. So I think, we have to be open about that as well. But I think, to answer your question, I think consumers have to be really, really savvy when purchasing things online. And, if it's a big investment, then they need to make sure they do their due diligence on reviews and things like that, to make sure that they are genuine. And often there is a mixture of genuine as well as fake. It's rare that you'll have only fake. There's often genuine as well, but they bump it up with fake or whatever.
See, I spend a lot of time now in the emerging Web3 space. And I actually think one of the ways that we will be able to maybe get, as you were talking, I was thinking, is the ability to be verified or to be validated, a different kind of verification, but to have a role like in Discord, or, for it to be proven, in fact, that you are a customer, or how much you've bought, or how valuable you are, or how long you've been a customer. At least we can have the ability right now to start to determine this is coming from an influencer who has never bought the product versus this is coming from someone who in fact is an enterprise customer or someone who's been a card member for 20 years. I think that helps because it's a level of disclosure that actually can give us just a bit more context and color commentary.
I think it definitely helps, but again, that can also be gamed because, like, for example, are you familiar with iHerb? I use it a lot here in Israel because it's really good. I order like all my vitamins or vitamins, as you may call them.
Oh, so it's
And
like a DoorDash for supplements.
Yeah. And they have this thing where you can get $1 off, like you can save rewards if you leave reviews. So they're incentivized, real people, when you've purchased something, to leave reviews. And you just don't know how genuine some of the reviews are because you know that they're getting paid $1 for their review, which isn't a lot, but they're incentivized. So I think, I mean, most of the reviews, you can tell which ones are genuine because people really go into really big detail and say how life-changing it was, whereas people who leave smaller ones. So I think what you're saying sounds great, but I do believe that human beings will always take shortcuts. We all want to get thin quick. We all want to make money quick. We all want things fast, quick, and easy. And I think that's when you try and put barriers in front of these things, like, for example, with Facebook, making you pay to play, to pay if you want people to see your content in effect. We'll always try loopholes. How can we get around that? And I think that's what human beings do, which is what we're seeing in marketing and sales, but organic versus, paid and things like that.
Do you think perhaps, though, that the world is changing or could be changing? For example, I mean, even if we think generationally, how our parents would have taught us about the value of hard work and honest days. I mean, that was the past. But now when we think about working for something, whether it's training for a marathon or building or being able to almost, I guess, even from a cultural standpoint, getting to a point where we try and game human nature. Maybe that's the idea. Can we game human nature and actually work hard and plant and enjoy the fruits of our labor, or is that ship sailed?
I think that ship has sadly sailed. I mean, look, you can have someone who's a teacher who works incredibly hard and they're not paid accordingly. We don't live in a fair society. I can remember, 30 years ago growing up, and neighbours, would be all sorts, from teachers to bus drivers to whatever, living in a very affluent, middle-class Jewish area in England. Today, you can't live in that area unless you're earning at least over 100, 200,000 a year, because you just wouldn't be able to buy a mortgage unless you inherited things. So the days of working hard, you now have to work smarter. It's not about working hard anymore. It's changed to working smarter and how you can leverage certain things. I mean, obviously, financial wealth and being financially successful isn't for everyone, and I'm not judging anyone. I think it's more important to be happy. But if we're talking about financial success, then working hard doesn't always come into play, I don't think, anymore.
Well, in terms of what makes Lilach happy, we had to go and send our reporters into the field to find out some fun facts. And
okay, it's gonna be fun.
And so what we learned is that for sure that being a groupie or a roadie is probably something that makes you happy. You've been on tour with Guns and Roses. Oops, that's the one I wanted to show, which is this actual live tour photo of you with Guns and Roses. Tell us about this story.
Oh, my goodness!
Were you with the band, or you just followed them?
No, it's a really, really long story. I'll tell you a very snippet of it. When I was 18, I can't believe I'm saying this publicly. I don't really talk about this publicly, but I'm actually adopted, and my biological father contacted me and wanted to meet me when I was 18. And it turns out when he he was American, and he came to England, and he timed it when his other daughter, who's my sister, was going out or married to the guitarist from Guns N' Roses. So there's a family connection. and I spent a week on tour with them. So yeah, it was. I have lots of fun stories, but I don't think I'll have to tell you a lot of them after because I can't publicly talk about it.
Oh, exactly.
But yeah,
The after show is going to be awesome.
yeah. But it was a really, really surreal, incredible, fun, amazing experience, which I'm very, very blessed to have had. So yeah.
Well, the other little clip, which I'll show in a moment, kind of came from me looking at your Twitter profile, and and a couple of things just jumped out. One was almost this this tagline, this beautiful little one line that says, "Earn more, stress less, love what you do." That, and also the fact that you promise to explode businesses and bank accounts like a treat-filled piñata, which I love. And I thought I would ask you about this idea. Look, everybody wants to earn more. Everybody wants to stress less. And unfortunately, people don't realize it's almost like the one has to come with the other in terms of this, and here you are telling us, which is don't work harder, work smarter. But here's another thought, which is love what you do. Is that the secret to stressing less and earning more? Tell us about love and how love factors into the equation.
I love that question, first of all. Look, I think it's about loving the hard stuff. I believe business should be boring. And I think that's part of the problem why so many entrepreneurs particularly struggle with business and being where they want to be, because they love what they do, but they hate the selling or the marketing or being more visible or just putting themselves out there. They're uncomfortable with it. And they want to do all the fun things. And I'm guilty of it as well. And I think when you can learn to love all aspects of business, particularly the boring things, particularly the things which are hard, that's when your business will explode and transform and change. And it's learning to love all those areas, because we all love the core of what we do. But most of us hate all the tech or the other stuff, or selling, or having to follow up, or do videos and put themselves out there and be raw and not get any likes or whatever, And I think when you can put a video out there knowing that maybe you won't get any views or anyone like it or comment, but you love what you do. When you go on a sales call and someone says, and someone doesn't even turn up, it's, and I know that sounds crazy, but it's loving the thought, okay, well, it's their loss, I'll move on to the next person. Do you know what I mean? And I think we have to love all those areas in business.
I mean, also,
of course, sorry, go on, yeah.
No, I was going to say part of loving even those failures is because you're loving the process, you're loving the journey, you're loving you, and you're also appreciating that without those bumps and bruises, you don't really get to appreciate the highs as well, right?
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head there, Joseph, because it's about loving the journey. Because a journey in business it's like a roller coaster. And I always say to people, you have to enjoy the highs or lows, or if you can't enjoy the lows, you have to create coping mechanisms to last, because nothing lasts forever. The good times, the bad times, everything changes. And I think if we've learned anything from, the last couple of years with COVID and stuff, is that, nothing lasts forever. It really doesn't. And things are moving so quickly. We've seen so much change in 2 years technologically and with all these new people coming into the marketplace. We're seeing something. I've been running businesses now for over 18 years, and I've never seen the marketplace so saturated and so much noise. And it's now so much harder to be heard, which is why I was talking earlier that we have to be much smarter now, because everyone's shouting in the same space and nobody's listening.
I had an exchange the other day, and I've been really, my new book is called Forever Changed, And I just had this like epiphany about the fact that change is not the big idea. It's the forever part. That's the big idea, which is when you transform, when you go through a life-changing experience. Of course, the last 2.5 years, we've all gone through this together. It's how do you prevent yourself from slipping back to your bad old habits? And I actually said the other day, you know, the first recorded form of change or instance of change was when Adam and Eve basically ate from the forbidden fruit, from the tree of knowledge. I mean, actually, like, you know, according to it, whether you believe in Old or New Testament, or quite frankly, any religion, that is the earliest form of when things were already just, you know, the apple cart, literally and figuratively, was turned on its head. You know, and Eve started pointing down to Adam and laughing at him, and hence the fig leaf or whatever the hell he put on his nether regions. But I mean, it's like why are we so surprised by change and the rate of change and the nature of change, when in actual fact, hasn't it always just been a central part? What has changed, Lilach, about change?
I think human beings are very, very habitual, and they really, really struggle with change consistently. Changing, everyone wants the outcome. So everyone wants to be thinner, wealthier, etc. But the process of creating that change is so hard or so painful, or they can't maintain it. Like, you know, you look at a typical diet. For 3 months, people will be really good. They lose all the weight, and then gradually they go back to their old ways and they put on the habits. It's the same as, you know, being successful in business. You know, you put in the hard work, you're doing all this stuff, and you run out of momentum. But what typically starts to happen, and why I think people struggle with change, is, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about people wanting things quickly and what results quickly. And the reality is to be financially successful, or to lose weight, for example, because they're both very, very similar in terms of the success and failure rate, is really hard to maintain for more than 3 to 6 months. And the reality is, in both cases, unless you've got hardly any weight to lose, or in case you're already making millions, it's going to take a good 6 to 12 months before you start to see significant results. And most people run out of steam. They don't have the patience for change because they don't want to do the boring stuff. And we're going back into circle. It's the boring stuff. It's the stuff which turns us off. And that's what leads to huge change. Like, you know, getting up early every day requires huge discipline. It's not hard to do. You just get up. You know, but it sounds incredibly hard. And because people struggle with change consistently every single day. It's a shame, really, isn't it? Because we all want all these wonderful things, and we're all open to changing, but keeping it consistently is so difficult for so many.
Well, you just actually beautifully segued back into the fact that you get up at 5 a.m. And I was thinking, how am I going to get back to it? But you can be my co-host anytime. But this makes no sense, because you get up at 5 in the morning. You live in Israel, but for the most part, America's asleep, which probably means that you're also working until 5 a.m. the next morning. With your US clients, etc. So what are you doing at 5 a.m. and when do you ever sleep?
So after today, because it's 8:30 here, so after our call today, I'll be going to bed. That's the difference. So so what do I do? So I have a routine. So I exercise first of all. I then journal. I meditate, and then I start work around 7 a.m. So the exercising and the meditation, journaling, I also do grateful and all of that. That takes a couple of hours. And then I start work. But I don't work all day. I used to, years ago, I used to work, before we moved to Israel, I used to work 70-hour weeks.
Wow.
And since we moved here, I really cut down. And most of the time I work 4 days a week now, because Friday is the weekend here and Sunday is the weekend there. So I've started to do that. Although sometimes I do a couple of hours on a Friday or a Sunday. But yeah, so I love it. It transformed my life. I love the quietness. I'm much more productive. And it's all about discipline and doing hard things. I mean, that's why I went into it, because I wanted to really challenge myself and push myself and do something which scared the hell out of me, basically. So yeah.
I actually started as well, and I get up at about 4:30 in the morning now.
Amazing.
And I hate when I start to see the sun come up, and suddenly my time is gone. And I just love, whether it's my laptop, whether it's my phone, whether it's, just listening into a clubhouse room or whatever, but it's my time, having my
Yeah.
coffee. It's my time. And there's something so peaceful about the darkness
Incredibly.
and about those moments. And you know what? Sometimes I'm super productive and sometimes I'm not productive at all, but I just feel like my time was my time before everything started getting distracty.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, isn't it? It's you've got no distractions. You're having me time, and I think, we don't get much me time as adults. We often have families or distractions or things like that. And I think, with the phone going, I mean, my phone doesn't stop for, WhatsApps and whatever, and it's permanently on do not disturb, my phone, actually, and I highly recommend that everyone does that. I'm a control freak, and I think that's also why I love it, because I'm controlling my time rather than it controlling me and my time, which is, often what happens. It's just lovely. And also, you can get into some really deep work, if you're working on a project or writing some content or whatever, because you just haven't got those distractions. And also, you're not going to even have that need or desire to look at your phone, because you know that half the world is asleep. So what's the point? So you just crack on,
I think that's part of it as well. Exactly that, which is it's knowing. I mean, maybe you can catch up and batch some emails, but for the most part, it's knowing that you're almost isolated. You're like in the wilderness. You're in the tech wilderness, and I love that idea, by the way, because I've been anguishing about it as someone who talks about it, who writes books on it, who has kids, and trying to figure out what is the solution to our addiction to our cell phones, our mobile phones. And I think that's a very elegant idea, which is just keep your phone permanently on do not disturb. Tell the people that you love that your phone is now permanently on do not disturb. And there are ways still to contact one another, because if you add someone to your favorites, they can
that's
still.
what I do.
So yeah, I think I might just start doing that and force my children. I mean, encourage my children to do that.
Yeah, I also have my phone on silent as well, so that you won't hear the ringtone, even if someone from my favorites does call. So yeah.
Bez says controlling your time is so important. Do you plan the week before, the day before, or how?
Oh, that's a great question. And yes, it really is important. So I typically do a week and a day before, and I'll always reevaluate as well. And one thing that I do as well, because this used to be a really bad habit of mine, which I've had to really work on, is I would top heavy, because I would have all these goals and all these aspirations to do so much, and I would want them done by midweek so that I could then do other things. So I would really pile up my Monday, Tuesday, etc., Wednesday. So now I'm getting better at spreading it out to give myself a chance to get everything completed. Because there's nothing worse than having a daily or weekly plan and then you're just not ticking things off. You feel disheartened and, it's not very good. So I try and make sure that I'm giving myself enough to do, but that's also achievable. But yeah, no, I have lists, and also I have my Google Calendar, and I work with a paper diary as well, and I use Monday. So I use lots of different things to help me plan as well.
All right. So I was on your website, and I happened to see a little quiz. And when you take the quiz, it's what's known as.
Ah, okay. Did you do it?
I did do it as well. 5 minutes. It took me 6. Where do I complain? I'm joking. 40 questions, 5 key business pillars. And so I took the quiz. I'm going to show you my results right now.
I'm
and
excited.
And you know, I have a couple of. I'm just going to set up this as follows, which is right now my students at NYU are doing a brand report card for actually a brand, but I made them do a report card self-assessment for themselves, and in grading, I saw they were all coming back with A's and high B's, and they all seem to be scoring themselves very, very highly. And so I went and I took it for myself, and I made sure that not only I scored lower, but I'm the lowest score in the entire class. So now their professor is going to end up with the lowest score, with them all getting these unbelievably inflated scores. And so I applied the same lens. It wasn't self-critical or overly critical. It wasn't, this idea of being so harsh on myself, but I wanted to be honest, and I wanted to rather introspect. And so I must say that as poor as I performed, I'm very happy with my results. So here were my results. I ended up with 53. Now, I might have been a little bit overly harsh on myself. It's very, very possible. But I want to tell you about exactly why I'm so super, super thrilled with my results. So, if you look, and I'll go ahead and full screen it as well, 79% and I think 67% on mindset and marketing. Those deserve to be green, for sure, deserve to be green, maybe even higher. I certainly have an incredibly optimistic and powerful, determined outlook, goals, focus, prioritization, passion, etc. And from a marketing standpoint, I kind of have a good sense of who I am, where I fit in, what I do, and how I do it. But I also know on the flip side that there's an element of non-linearity, scattiness, mad scientist, all things to all people and nothing to nobody. Now on pricing, I kind of ended up in orange, and I think that's also going through my own transformation and being able to be more comfortable with, I guess, what would be self-worth, or the ability to draw a line and stand behind that line. And then under productivity and sales, I mean, they deservedly should be in the red, because it's always been, I hate sales. I think I suck at it. I feel awfully uncomfortable. I feel like I need to take a bath afterwards. I feel like I can't convince anybody ever to buy anything from me unless they want to buy, in which case I can probably still talk them out of it. And then productivity is a bit of a mess in terms of structure. So, I took the quiz. You now have all my data, and now I'm ready. The doctor is in session. Can I be helped? Is there any way back for me, Lilach?
Well, I think it's about what I said earlier. It's about learning to love sales, because I bet, and also have the confidence to say, actually, I'm really good at it, because I bet you are good at it. Your mindset is stopping you. So you would, if your sales was higher, your mindset would be higher. Okay. So it's 79 at the moment, but to get that up to 100 or 95 or whatever, I think your sales would have to go higher for you. And the productivity is all about discipline and putting things into place when you do get distracted, and being aware of what's stopping you, and also leveraging tools. It could very well be that you're not making the most of tools which will help you be more productive, more efficient, more effective with the time that you do have.
Well, listen, I mean, this is gold, Jerry. This is gold. Amazing that there are actionable nuggets. I have not gone through my extensive feedback yet, but what I also like, Lilach, is this idea of the fact that they're all interrelated and all interconnected, and one feeds into the other. And I suppose that's kind of, when you think about it, it makes sense. But it's not something that was, kind of intuitively obvious to me coming into this self-assessment.
Yeah, no, they're all very, very interlinked. And by the way, just to make you feel a little bit better, your score with the sales and the productivity isn't a surprise. Like, I see that a lot with a lot of people, because people they don't mind, like most people prefer marketing to sales. It's like sales that people have got a dirty conscience, and that is also connected to mindset and pricing, because that was Amber. So that needs a bit of work as well, which, you're aware of it. And I think it's, you said about, you have to be comfortable knowing your self-worth, but I don't even like that word comfortable, because I think if we're comfortable, then we're going to charge something that we think is fair. And in our minds, we then immediately go down in price because we want to be fair and affordable and things like that, which means we want to help as many people as we can. But actually, we don't want to help everybody. And it's about really believing in ourselves and really valuing what we have to offer.
Yeah, well. I like that. I mean, I like that. And, my brother-in-law, he basically says the opposite of what most people, in fact, almost everyone says about a good negotiation. People always say a great negotiation, both sides feel that they got a good deal and there's good compromise. And he says a great deal, both sides feel like they got screwed, feel actually uncomfortable about the outcome. Look, he takes a very, Dufka approach. Go look it up, people that don't know what the word Dufka means. A contrarian approach. But I kind of like the contrarianness of that, which actually says you shouldn't necessarily feel comfortable, because the reality, I guess, is when we compromise, we're only compromising because we're like exhausted. We're like tired. Like, you wore me down. Okay, fine. We'll meet halfway. And I think, And I think,
but also,
is,
I mean, going back to pricing, I think most people, it actually comes down to sales. And I'll tell you why. Because most people are nervous to put their prices up, particularly right now in the economy, because it is a challenging period for many, many people all over the world. But the problem is, when it comes to pricing, is people are nervous because they're desperate for the yes, and they don't want them to say no or to think about it, and then off they go. But the problem is that most people don't have enough in their pipeline. Now, if everyone had a pipeline so full that they couldn't cope with all the leads and they were expanding and growing, etc., then they'd just put their prices up anyway, because they'd be like, well, I may as well take a punt. In fact, that's how I started to raise my prices, because years ago I was having so much interest for something and I didn't have the confidence to say no because I didn't want to upset them. So they offered a crazy amount and I was like, oh, okay then. And then that just gradually gave me the confidence. So I'm an accidental. I fell into it accidentally, but then I saw the power of it and I would push myself. But ultimately, if people don't have enough potential leads or, a healthy pipeline, and they need that sale, then they're much more likely to negotiate or go down in price or offer much less than what they're worth. So they're very, very connected.
Right. And then, of course, I mean, it's a numbers game. For sure, right? I mean, I wrote a book called Flip the Funnel, but there still is a traditional sales funnel. And then, of course, for people that are in B2B, you also realize the power of inbound leads. But still, whether it's an outbound or an inbound lead, a lead is a lead, and you still need enough of them in your pipeline in order then to allow the forces of supply and demand to do their thing, which ultimately has an upward influence and effect on pricing. Plus the confidence angle, which is, as the Lilach, as the saying goes, like, mention a high price. You never know, they might just accept it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you have to really hone in on your target audience. And I think now more than ever, entrepreneurs, particularly small businesses and entrepreneurs, they really need to work harder and smarter in terms of speaking with their target audience more, because they need to be much more niche and be very highly focused, because otherwise they spend far too much time talking to the wrong people, feeling frustrated and disillusioned that it doesn't work or whatever.
Look, you do not want to be messaging Lilach at 5 o'clock in the morning in Israel, because she's not going to respond, because we know she's journaling, she's meditating, you know, she's manifesting, she's yogaing, etc. But when I asked you what you wanted to talk about, you said, I'm flexible. I love everything to do with business, success, mindset, productivity, or if it's tactical, everything to do with lead gen, social media, SEO, content marketing, which is really where, you know, just Google her and you will see her reputation. It was interesting because when I looked at your Twitter account, I noticed a very simple structure. You really are, you know, there's super consistency going down, and you're just giving value. Want to become a social media influencer? Tips, tricks, tools, lists, and I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of, there's Marsha Collier. She was on the show as well. So I think you're very, very consistent and very deliberate in terms of how you use content strategy from not just a lead gen standpoint, but in terms of creating value, utility, and thought leadership.
Thank you.
So now,
what's the question?
What?
Was there a question coming, or you were just complimenting me, which is very nice?
Sometimes there doesn't have to be a question. There can just be a pause where we just let the compliment sit. Because you're a Capricorn, we Capricorns are such perfectionists that we don't like compliments, and we don't take compliments well. And so sometimes the best thing to do is just to say thank you. But that's not why I paused. Yes, there is a question coming. No.
Right.
So I'm flexible. So immediately I saw this and I was like, wait a second, there are a lot of things here, but she's flexible. So I went and found a quote for you. And this was the quote that I found for you. You must always be able to predict what's next and then have the flexibility to evolve. I like this because it discussed flexibility. I liked it because it's a different way to think about change. Also, I liked it because Mark Benioff knows a thing or two. And this is his quote as well. I think it kind of brings us full circle, Lilach, when we think about this idea of all these changes happening, all of this stimuli, all this saturation, etc. So, Lilach, from your vantage point in the world, what is next? What is coming next? And then how do we cope with it? How do we, in fact, use agility and flexibility to evolve, to adapt, and to integrate what comes next into our business-to-business lives?
Oh, goodness. I think the marketplace is really going to be changing. I think next year we're going to see a lot of people who left their jobs or were made redundant or whatever for COVID and set up on their own. I think a lot of them are going to go back into the employment. I think we're definitely going to see a lot of that. I think companies are going to get much more lean. We're already seeing lots of layoffs and things like that. But I think the market's going to pick back up again. I think people are panicking and doing things, and I think things will always go full circle. I think SEO is going to get even more important because people want much more organic reach. They don't want to be so reliant on advertising. And I think content continues to remain the king. We're seeing a lot more video content, and I've been very late to the party with my YouTube, and that's on my list, and I'm busy planning away and creating lots of video content to sort out my YouTube because that's terrible. And I think, for me personally, I'm working on building a lot more assets which I can control. So I'm really working on my website and creating even more content and getting higher up in the search rankings and things like that, because who knows what the future is with social media. It's becoming, people are very disillusioned from it, people are frustrated, people are flocking, and it's less active, and everyone's saying the same thing. So I think next year, if you want to stand out, you have to be prepared to not play safe. I think you have to be controversial, you have to be bold, you have to take risks, you have to experiment, you have to test with things, and be prepared to work harder than you've ever worked, I think, because it's still very noisy. You know, a piece of content now. I think also one of the other things that we're going to be seeing as well is much more measurement. You know, people have in the past, they've like just done things because that's what they should be doing. But I think we're going to see less and people actually measuring and testing and tweaking to see how it can perform rather than keep putting stuff out.
I really love the response as we kind of wind down, but I can't let you go because there were certain contradictions in there, and the contradictions are not contradictions in what in your logic, but almost in the reality that this is not going to be that easy for people. So, for example, I'll tell you what one of them is: people going back to the office, and yet offices are going to be leaner, which means something's got to give. So an increase in supply of labor and talent, and yet companies measuring, testing, leaner are not necessarily going to be hiring. So that's going to create one interesting pressure point. And then the other one that you spoke about was don't play safe, take risks, be more controversial, but yet there's still the need to test and still the need, you know, for increased measurement. And so I would love for you to, maybe you don't need to chat about the kind of the work from home and the labor shortage, but what about this, how do you reconcile this disconnect between taking more risks, following your gut, you know, being able to just fire, ready, aim, and yet this need that marketers and brands and companies need to test, learn, evolve, measure, you know, death by 1,000, you know, budget cuts, etc. How do we reconcile that?
I think part of the reason why so many people are nervous to test and take risks is because they're worried about what will happen if it doesn't work. They don't think about, well, what will happen if it does work? And I think that's a mindset thing. And I think the people who are prepared to, like, I sometimes post things on my LinkedIn, you know, like I posted the other day about, you know, people are afraid of likes, you know, and they think, or not getting any likes or comments, and they compare themselves to other people. And it's like, well, who gives a, you know, who cares? Because you don't know how they got those likes. You don't know if they belong to a pod or whatever. So I think it's getting out of your comfort zone and just trying and having the time and the resources to be able to test. And I think, you know, there are layoffs, but I think that won't be for long. I think people will realize that they can't, they're going to burn out. So all these people working these hours, you know, people still need people to do the stuff. You know, we've not, there is a lot of contradiction here because this is what's happening. But then in 6 months' time, people start to panic and see, you know, these people are burnt out, they're getting sick, they're tired, they're not performing as well as they can. We need extra help. But instead of hiring people, they're probably going a lot more to freelancers and outsourcing because they don't want the employment costs. But I definitely think marketing, business tends to go full circle. You know, what was popular a few years ago is going to come back. And likewise, you know, ads were huge 2-3 years ago. And people could get 5 to 10 times ROI on spending, you know, $1. Spend $100, you know, you make X amount. So it was really worth it. Whereas now people are struggling with ads. So now they're looking at organic. You know, email. Everyone used to say, oh, email's dead, but it's coming back. It's much more in fashion. But what we're seeing now with emails, for example, or even the whole DMing, is that if you want your email to convert and to stand out, be memorable, you have to take a risk. You have to maybe add a bit of humor or personalize it or work that much harder for it. So I think that all these things will still work and still be there, but you just have to do a different approach to it.
I do love, as a great final cherry on top, when we're selling and we're always afraid of what happens if it doesn't work and focusing on, will we lose our jobs and and what does failure look like, etc. Why not just turn it completely on its head and say, well, what if it does work?
Absolutely.
And by working and doing it ahead of your competition, you get to learn, you get to benefit, you get to double down, you get to rinse and repeat, scale with success when your competitor is still mitigating and managing and going through the same procrastination. And I think that's a great way to kind of, just adjust, to your point, the mindset, which is focus right now, not just on taking the risks, but focusing on the returns as well. You're never going to get the gains and the returns if you don't take the risks, right? No pain, no gain.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I think, just to add to that the companies over the net, regardless of the size of you are, whether you're one man, 10 people, 50 or thousands, the companies, the people that continue to market, to really push themselves far outside their comfort zone, to continue to sell and to be really, really visible, and to create all these offers and just, pimp themselves, literally, they're the ones who are going to survive this. I genuinely believe that. And who knows, I wish I had a crystal ball with where we'll be in 12 months, but you look at any other recessions or hard times. I remember back in 2008 when I had my business then, it was the people who continued to invest that thrived when it was over. They totally overtook everybody else. And I think that's what we have to do. And it's hard to do that.
So, pimp yourself as well. I don't know, get a special hat or is that what they call black hat marketing? I don't know. But this has been
a bit dodgy. Well, no, it's not that dodgy, but it has a bit of a negative connotation.
No, I mean literally just put a hat on you. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
All right, or then just get up at 5. Get up at 5 in the morning. And then when you get up at 5 in the morning, contact Lilach at lilachbullock.com. Take the test. Subscribe to her podcast, The Lilach Bullock Show. It's as simple as that. Follow her on the Twitter or on Instagram. And remember, everything begins here. It's mindset. Mindset will propel us and move us forward in incredible ways. No pain, no gain. I mean, that's Lilach, that is what Chuck Norris says to me all the time. And this is what he thought about your insights today.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And we will be back soon. You're approved. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.